And Pat Wood is talking to us about his book called Technocracy Rising. So, Pat, we're adjusting to the clock here, and we've got a long segment right here, so let's jump right into it. Why should people be concerned about technocracy? What is it? What threat does it pose? What do we need to know?
That's exactly what we need to know. It's what technocracy is. I was saying before the break that people like yourself, and there are many people around the country that have bitten off a piece of this monster, and they are doing some really good research and ferreting out stuff, hidden stuff sometimes just takes plain old hard research. But everybody that I've talked to knows there's something wrong in America, and not just in America, really, around the world. The headlines you see from overseas, they're staggering. People know there's something wrong, and there's a lot of good researchers around the country that have kind of gotten a hold of one piece or another of this monster. But the value that Technocracy Rising brings to the table is that it connects all the dots, Dave, on how these things, these seemingly unrelated or unconnected things, really are connected into a master program that was started at least in 1973. And these people have had a 40-year head start to bring this world of technocracy to us today. And basically all the things that we complain about, whether it would be smart grid, whether it would be common core education standards, whether it would be Jade Helm, or whether it would be the NSA with their spying, or whether it would be economic issues like the push for taking cash out of society, or Greece melting down and altogether going back to a barter system, first time since Nazi occupation during World War II, that a country in Europe has melted down so far that it had to go back to a barter system. The world's gone nuts, has gone upside down, and what people are trying to put together is what is this? What's going on? What is this? And I can tell you with great certainty, because as I went through this research with my 40 years of background researching elitism and economic issues and the Trilateral Commission and so on, I can tell you with great certainty and authority that what is being foisted upon the world is a system called technocracy. It's not brand new. It's not something that just was invented last year. It's something that actually was architected in the 1930s in the heat of the Great Depression. And it's kind of sat for about 30 years. Nobody did anything with it until, lo and behold, Zbigniew Brzezinski picked it up in 1970 when he wrote his book while he was at Columbia University called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. This was the beginning of the Trilateral Commission when he and David Rockefeller, just 3 years later, started the Trilateral Commission with the express mission statement of fostering a new international economic order. That was their catchphrase. That was their marketing, their branding, their buzz phrase. New international economic order. We did not understand at the time what new meant. I'm not trying to make a play on Bill Clinton or anything. We said that it depends on what is means. But, we didn't know what new meant. We thought, well, they're doing something with capitalism. Maybe they're going to rig the slot machine so it always pays them off better or something. But we really didn't know. I didn't discover this until a few years ago when I ran across historic technocracy and began to study it. And I compared what I learned about technocracy against what I know these clowns have done since 1973, and lo and behold, there's a perfect match. That's what set me off. You think you got scared. There was more than a few times that I felt like I was literally looking into the face of hell. It was scary. And these people have been methodically implementing the system of technocracy over the last 40 years. They're using any NGO they can get a hold of. They're using the United Nations. That's a major contagion right now to take it all over the world. And their plans are not just, if we look at a microcosm of stuff, we look at education, for instance, Their plans aren't just to dumb down the American people. Are they dumbing down the American people? Yes, they are. But is that the plan? No, not at all. You look at surveillance. Well, is surveillance just so, people can snoop on and have some kind of, control or something over us? No, not at all. Will it have that effect? Yes, but it's an integral part of the implementation of technocracy, because they need those things in place to make the big machine work. And that's what people need to see, is what is this big machine that's harvesting the world, so to speak. And when people see what technocracy is and really get it, their eyes are open for the first time to see the master plan. And I will say also with great certainty, because I've been fighting these things for 40 years, for all the effort that good men have put in, and women have put in, to try and reverse the course, the downward slide of our nation for the last 40 years, God bless them, every one. But the fact of the matter is, we're worse off today than we've ever been in the history of our country.
Oh, there's no question about that, Pat.
We have gone downhill, and we're still going downhill, and that only proves to me that we have been fighting an enemy we never knew existed. And we need to wake up to that, because you cannot defeat an enemy you do not know.
Well, I would add to that, too, that someone actually asked me recently when I was talking about your book in an interview, and they asked me, says, well, Dave, what exactly is technocracy? And I said, ultimately, it's the control of everything. And a lot of people, Pat, have the mistaken notion that if we just got rid of the Federal Reserve, everything would be okay. If we just eliminated the IRS or free trade agreements, America could be restored to her glory. And what I try to tell people, these aren't singular issues. We are opposed by an entire diametrically opposed lifestyle. And when we come back from the break, because I think I'm hearing the music in the background,
we'll explain
to that view. Hey, stay tuned.
An emergency preparedness.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Technocracy rising, because it is the obliteration of the American way of life. It's the total destruction of our Constitution. And as I was saying to Pat going into the break, Technocracy is an attack upon every facet of our life. So, Pat, let me throw it back to you for your comment.
Well, okay. What technocracy was, as it was developed in the 1930s, there was another group of actors that came to the stage of world control. They weren't the political dictators. They weren't the psychopathic madmen, although they might be, I guess, but they weren't. They were scientists and engineers. And these scientists, they're very prominent scientists and engineers in the 1930s, and they felt that because technology had come into society and changed society permanently, that they and they alone were capable of running an engineering society for the good of mankind. So that's what they set about doing. They hated politicians. They wanted to do away with the politicians altogether. And they wanted everybody just to turn over control of the world to them, to manage the world by their so-called scientific method. It sounds crazy. It sounds like the mad scientists run amok, but this is what they intended to do. They architected a system that would do away with money, that would do away with currency, that would do away with supply and demand economics, and all of the goods and services in society would be produced at their beck and call. In other words, they would decide what to produce, they would decide how much to produce, and they would decide how much you were allowed to consume. And they said there would be no private property. And in other words, all the resources of the world would be managed by them for the common good. And it was a utopian system, Dave. And what people miss in history and literature, the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley was looking straight into the face of technocracy in 1932. That book was written in 1932, Dave, right when technocracy was at Columbia University. This was a subject matter. And how he extrapolated that was it would result in a scientific dictatorship. And today, every time we see some scary thing in society, we say, oh, it's a brave new world, isn't it, brother? We use that term now. It's become like a term like Xerox or, whatever. Don't make a copy, go make a Xerox. But we live in a brave new world. Well, if people understood that Aldous Huxley was writing his book based on his knowledge of technocracy, they would have a whole different view of what that phrase, that title really means. This is a brand new thing. It's never been done before.
Brave New World. And, it really has its roots, from my perspective, in Fabian socialism, which espouses the belief that we even see in Obamacare today. For example, if you have a brain aneurysm and you're 70 years old, you can get treatment. If you're 70 years old in one day, you get comfort medication. They send you off to die. And the Fabian socialists believe that if you're of no use to society, society has no use for you. And is there an element of this in technocracy?
Dave, there are commonalities with all of the major isms that we could talk about, whether it be fascism, communism, socialism, Marxism. They're all basically totalitarian systems, and there are some pieces of it that kind of overlap. But technocracy is a brand new thing, and the reason, the biggest differentiator is that it will not depend on any kind of supply and demand economics to run the economic system in the world. This is the key. All of these other isms, the communism and fascism, they're all predicated on capitalism, one form or another. The only argument was over who's going to manage the production of goods. And so the fascists say, well, the corporations are going to tell us what to do. And the communists say, well, the government's going to tell us what to do. And, the socialists might have some combination of we're going to tell you what to do. But it still has capitalism underneath it as a base. It still has a currency. It still has, some measure of supply and demand economics, and the goods that are made are the ones that people want. Technocracy turns that on its head. It says, no, the only people that are going to decide what gets produced and in what quantity are the scientists and engineers. they will make a priority decision as to what people should be consuming, and that's what they're going to get, period. There's never
now, when
been
you say
anything like
consuming
this.
for the average person, driving around places like Greeley or Fort Collins, what do you mean by what they're consuming? Is there going to be a limitation placed on people?
Absolutely. There already are in many places limitations put on. I have to say, if the Agenda 21 crowd would ever somehow just have their way by waving a magic wand, you and I would either be riding a bicycle or light rail everywhere we go. We would have no car. We would have no combustion engines. We would have no barbecue in our backyard either because it gives off smoke. And these people would try and, put us back somewhere about around 1850 if they could, living a lifestyle that most Americans today would just think that's the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to them, and I think that, honestly, they'd be right. But the choices, as they would limit the manufacture of goods for people, you wouldn't have 50 kinds of cars to choose from when you went down to buy a car. Let's say you could buy a car and they were still on the market at all. Well, you might end up finding there's only one car to buy, and it looks something like a Yugo, has a 50 horsepower engine and gets 200 miles per gallon or something or whatever. Or maybe you could get an electric bicycle, or some other thing. But you will buy and use what they decide you should buy and use. Period. They'll make all those decisions for you.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. In fact, Pat, let me tell you about something that some of the people in our listening audience will already know about. Fort Collins, Colorado is often called the jewel of the Ickley Empire, and it's reference to Agenda 21 policies. And they've got leaders up there, like Lisa Papa and so forth, that rule with an iron fist when it comes to Agenda 21 policies, forcing smart meters into all homes, even illegally. There's an opt-out procedure. Just ask Virginia Farver about how they illegally jumped her fence and put a smart meter on without her permission after she opted out. This happened in Fort Collins. In fact, the most egregious thing that happened in Fort Collins is Stacy Lynn, an activist against Agenda 21, who is fighting against no cars allowed, gasoline cars allowed in downtown Fort Collins, and you could only have eco-friendly cars. And Stacy successfully lobbied against that proposal, rallied the population against it, and they defeated it. Well, how did they respond? Well, I've written an article about that, and I'll look it up during the break so you can reference it later. She was taken into court, and they took her kid from her, and yet they never found her guilty of any wrongdoing. And this is how they do business. And so, Pat, I know you're not familiar with the Stacy Lynn story, but I have written about this pretty extensively. But she was punished and had her child taken away, even though her rights were never severed legally, and she hasn't seen her son in 2.5 years because she dared to fight against the very policies that you're talking about.
Dave, these people are down deep. They're mean-spirited. They're revengeful in every way. Just 3 months ago, Al Gore stood up and gave a major speech on climate change. And he said that anybody who didn't agree with climate change, number one, is a denier. That's a term of derision. You denier, you. And if you're a denier, he said that you deserve to be punished. He used that word, Dave, punished.
Yeah.
Now, that's just amazing coming from, supposedly a world-class politician of any kind, that he's going to punish somebody that doesn't believe what he believes. See, it's not that you didn't do what he wanted you to do. It's that, no, your head isn't lined up with his head, and for that reason, you deserve to be punished. That's the same thing what you're talking about here was played out with this lady in Colorado.
Yeah, Stacy Lynn from Fort Collins. In fact, I'll take this one step further. There was a judge that's in Fort Collins now. Her name is Julie Kuntz-Field, and I really developed this well. In fact, if you go to my search engine, thecommonsenseshow.com, and put in Stacy Lynn's name, you can read the whole story. But this judge was brought in specifically to enforce Agenda 21 policies, and her first case was the Stacy Lynn case, and she wouldn't let Stacy call witnesses or do anything else, and she summarily took her kid away without provocation or cause, and then had Stacy jailed because she didn't turn him over fast enough. And when was Stacy arrested? As she was leaving the court, as if the kid was supposed to be standing out on the sidewalk at the age of 8 years old to be handed off to the court. And her name, Julie Kunzfield, you know what she did before she was a judge? That's a rhetorical question. She was a consultant to the United Nations and the World Bank. You don't get much more New World Order Agenda 21 than that. And she was brought in by outgoing Governor Bill Ritter to steal this child, to stop Stacy Lynn in her tracks with her anti-Agenda 21 policies. Pat, I really didn't think I would take this here, Pat, but I want the listening audience to know this is real, it's affecting their community, and everything that you're saying here, Pat, is true, and it's carried out in the very community we're broadcasting to.
Well, the kinds of things that are going on a local basis like that are happening all over the world, not just here in our country. We tend to think just our country because we don't get very good news from overseas. But the same kinds of things are happening around the world. And it's unfortunate that the rest of the world is looking to us, that is, people like you and me, to stop the tide of the Sustainable Development Agenda 21. All of this is wrapped up in technocracy, folks. It's not just technocracy, but it's a very key component of it. The whole Sustainable Development climate change mantra, the Agenda 21 implementation since 1992, all of this is a key part of the infrastructure of technocracy. They need all of these things, not just one or two or something here or there, but all of it. And they have brought Agenda 21 Sustainable Development down to every community in America. ICLEI had a large part to do with this. That stands for Local Governments for Sustainability, by the way. And their website is iclei.org. And if you don't believe it, go look it up and you'll pop an eyeball or two. And these people have brought Agenda 21 Sustainable Development down to virtually every community, every county, and every state in our country. And most people don't even have a clue. In fact, most people have been, most leaders in those communities have been in absolute denial mode. If you ask them, well, do you know anything about Agenda 21? They say, oh, I never heard of it. Well, then how come this? No, I don't know where that came from. There's some consultant came in and gave that to us. They don't even know half the time what's going on, and these consultants come in from outside their area, and they bring this stuff in. Oh, that looks great. Let's do that. And they run after it like there's no tomorrow. America has been sold a bill of goods, and it has bought the bill of goods, and we're now paying the price all over our country for it. And it's going to get worse.
Pat, where I've seen this come to play, and I'm going to reference just the local elections here in my immediate area and the Phoenix area, but it's true in any community in the country. You'll see these political signs every 2 and every 4 years when people run for election. And particularly like with city council seats or state legislature seats, you'll see, I'm for smart growth. Like, we're going to grow and be smart. But that's not what it means, is it? And I've asked politicians, I've actually called them, and I've asked them, can you give me your definition of smart growth? And they have no idea what they're talking about until they get into office. Can you address that?
Until they get into office, yeah. Smart growth is a kind of a buzzword for Agenda 21 style land use policies. And one of the kind of things we throw at it are things like public-private partnerships, where you have independent companies, private companies coming in, partnering with the city. It's kind of a fascist sort of a thing, isn't it? They partner with the city, they get tax concessions, sometimes they get free money, sometimes it really is a business partnership. They go in and they develop a big swath of land, or they put in some apartments, some office space, urban renewal.
Yeah, let me hold it right there. We're coming up on the break, but when we come back, I want you to finish this thought about what it means to people locally. We're just hitting the key issues right there. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll see you on the other side of this break.
There was a man sent from God whose name was John.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Randy, our special guest is Pat Wood, and Pat is the author of Technocracy Rising, and we're working our way through a discussion of what exactly technocracy is. But Pat, before we jump back in, I'm sure a lot of people now are paying attention, and they're going, this is stuff I don't like, and they're going to want to read about this in your book and visit you on your website. So can you give out that information, please?
You betcha. The book's available at technocracyrising.com, and if you don't know how to spell technocracy, it's pretty much like it sounds. Technocracy. Just think of democracy, except put tech at the front of it, and you'll have it. You can get the book there. You can get it on Amazon.com as well. There's a Kindle version on Amazon if you like to read on a computer or a laptop or whatever. And we were talking about smart growth just as we left the last break, and a good definition of smart growth is this. This is just from Wikipedia, but it's pretty accurate. It says smart growth is an urban planning and transportation theory that concentrates growth in compact, walkable urban centers to avoid sprawl. It also advocates compact, transit-oriented, walkable, bicycle-friendly land use, including neighborhood schools, complete street, mixed-use development with a range of housing choices. And it's interesting, smart growth is a term that's used in America for this. As the Agenda 21 program essentially promotes sustainable development, and that's all it promotes. But in Europe and the UK, they call the term there is called compact city. Another term they use is urban intensification. You get the idea of what it is. That's why we call many of these developments that you see now, where you have commercial use on the bottom and apartments or townhouses above, we call that stack and pack housing. It's a very popular form of development with smart growth. Well, the fact of the matter is, studies have been done on smart growth now. It's been around long enough. They've determined that anywhere the smart growth has been implemented, it has raised the cost of infrastructure, housing, everything else by a minimum of 25%. The customer has gotten screwed, royal, by having to pay 25% more for something they didn't even want in the first place. And then their cities get all screwed up with this stuff, and it ends up being more likely urban blight than it does something people really want to live in. It's a real travesty. It's just one part of the monster, but it's something that's down and personal for a lot of people in a lot of cities, because you see these all over and you wonder, gosh, where'd that come from? Then you go to another city and you see something just like it and say, dang, it's over here too. It's kind of like a chain restaurant that just pops up all over the country all of a sudden.
Well, but Pat, this has applicability to our listening audience again. On College Avenue, and all of you local people know what I'm talking about, there are stack and pack apartments. A lot of us think that it's only in New York City and San Francisco and Austin, Texas, and I would say au contraire, mon frere. This is actually in Fort Collins, Colorado. And those stack and packs, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, they're apartments that run about 250 to 500 square feet. Is that right?
Yes, many of them do. Many of them are very small.
Let me broaden this just a little bit for a moment. Are you familiar with the website America2050.org?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I figured you would be. I've written about this. Don't go there now, folks. Stay with us right here. But America2050.org basically talks about the megacities concept. Pat, I don't know if we're ready to bridge into that yet, and I'll kind of let you set the pace here. But let's get some concluding remarks on smart growth and HOAs and how that all fits in. And then, certainly sometime in this interview, I want to make sure that we hit 2050 in the megacities.
Well, I guess we'll get there. The thing about smart growth is it's a very small component of a big system. It's part of technocracy. The whole smart growth idea came to be as a result of Agenda 21. That was the document that was produced from the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit that was held in Rio de Janeiro. That document produced and outlined all of the things that we see today that we're complaining about, including smart growth. That's one of the things. That's not all of the things, but it's a big one, and it hits our pocketbook and hits where we live. And people, quite frankly, are just aggravated by it, but they don't know where it comes from. They need to, if they see the big picture, they'll see, oh, I get it now, why they have to do this and why they are doing it.
Yeah, it's the control of everything. We've got a caller, and we want to work in the listening audience into our discussion as we process these 2 hours with Patrick Wood, the author of Technocracy Rising. We have a caller on hold. Let's go live out phone lines. Welcome, caller. What's your name, and what's your question for Pat?
Hi, Dave. This is Virginia Farver.
Oh, my, were your ears burning, Virginia? I was just talking about you.
Yes, I just heard you. That's why I'm calling in. Pat, I'm actually in the movie called Take Back Your Power because of the loss of my son in a brain cancer cluster on the San Diego State University campus. It involved a cell tower that was connected to the smart grid. And I just want to let you know, I live in Fort Collins, and I had a smart meter forced upon me. And the city of Fort Collins actually found the documents. We were signed on to smart growth in 1995, so they're 20 years ahead of us with this stuff.
Yes, they are. That's amazing.
And Dave, I wanted to, if the audience is aware, Fort Collins recently was signed on to this more of this UN stuff. It's called the Resilient Cities, and I didn't know if Pat had heard about that yet. And
Absolutely.
Actually, it's what they have is called disaster risk reduction, and now they're coming up with broadband that they want to put. Actually, I found documents from the Iridium Corporation where they want to cover every square inch of the United States in high-powered cell towers. And I didn't know if you guys were aware of that. It's just as big as the grid is itself.
Yeah, let me interject this for Pat's benefit and the listening audience's benefit. Where Virginia is really leading with this comment is it leads to electromagnetic toxicity, and it's all part of Agenda 21, and it's under ICLEI and so forth. Pat, are you aware of what she's speaking about?
I am very much so, and this has been a common issue with a lot of the groups around the nation that have been fighting smart grid. That is an important issue. I will have to say I do not believe that it is the primary issue that smart grid is put in place in the first place. It's an unintended consequence, if you will. It's a nasty one too, and I'm not saying I approve of it in any way, shape, or form. It's stupid. But if there was some way to get Wi-Fi thrown out of the equation altogether, let's just say they finally decided, okay, too many people are complaining, we're not going to do Wi-Fi anymore. How long do you think it would take to find some other way to communicate with that smart meter on the side of your building? Well, I can tell you by experience it would take them about 30 days before they came up with another way to communicate other than Wi-Fi with that device on the side of your house or business. And they've done that in many places already.
Virginia, if you got a moment, just stay with us. We're going to go to break. Tuned, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.
Square Root Construction is pleased to help support the American Freedom Network by offering a high-quality custom deck construction services.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You've noticed that there are few commercials on this radio network, and there's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our various affiliates. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs on our Listen and Schedule pages. Then when you subscribe, we'll send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately and continue with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We ask you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program, host, or cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Recover twice, and it is a tremendous read, but it almost makes you want to hide under the bed at night, except Pat does have solutions. Also, we held over, I believe Virginia's still with us, Virginia Farver from Fort Collins, who, Pat, I'll let you know, you hear that she's just not an average person off the street. I've interviewed her several times on my show. She is an expert on electromagnetic poisoning. And, Virginia, I wanted you to follow up with anything else you wanted to ask Pat.
Well, I don't know if I just want to ask if he was aware of, I'm actually helping groups fight not only the smart grid, but now they have developed something called FirstNet, and this is for emergency responders, and they want to have state-to-state and worldwide connections, just like the grid. And it's for, like I said, emergency responders, and it's very, very, from what I found out, it's the P25 program through APCO International, and it's in the same category as the UK Tetra, and so it's very powerful stuff. And this is actually called Horizon 2020 in the UK, and this will take us now to 5G.
Okay. Yeah, I probably have nothing to say to that. I'd love to hear from you, though, Virginia. If you could send me some more information or whatever. If go to my website, Technocracy Rising. You can, put in your name and address, whatever, and contact me there.
You bet.
I'd love to hear from you and hear about more of the information that you have.
I've got lots of it, so I just want people to be aware of that.
Yeah, yes, she does, and she is quite the activist fighting against these policies in Fort Collins. Virginia, I really appreciate you calling in. It's always great to hear from you.
Great to hear from you, too, Dave. So I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Small world here. I mentioned Virginia Farver, and voila, there she is like magic.
There she is. And Virginia, if you're still listening, I would love to have you read Technocracy Rising, because I'm pretty certain that you'd get it. Even on the first read, you may read it again like Dave did, but I think you'd get it pretty quickly. And since you brought up smart grid while we're on it, Dave, I'd like to bring up my data pitch. Smart grid is resisted for a number of reasons. I just want to put all those aside just for a second and say this. Smart grid is certainly it's about energy. It's about energy management. That was one of the core requirements of original Technocracy from the 1930s. However, the real thing with smart grid is not so much just about energy. It's about the data that they get from this. The data looking into your home to see what your patterns, your habits are, to see how much information, how much energy you're consuming, that sort of thing. It's about your data that's being rolled up into a global system, not just national. It's being rolled up into a global system to be able to use this data to manage the economic system worldwide. And it goes beyond just smart grid. Take Obamacare, for instance. Is Obamacare just about your good health? Does anybody really think they're going to get well because Obamacare is in place? Hardly. It's about the data they're collecting. For Pete's sake, your doctors now have been instructed to ask you if you own a gun. I mean, it's not about health. It's about snooping into private information about you so they can put into the master database to use it for other purposes. And you could go on down the line. You say, well, what about NSA spying? Is it really just about spying? No, it's about collecting data. It's all going to the same place. And when the government gets a hold of this massive store of data and correlates it together, that's where things get really interesting as far as technocracy is concerned, because they need that level of data, real-time data coming out of the economic system in order to be able to set policies to control the economic system. That's what this is all about. It's about getting to a place where they can flip a switch and convert the world into an economic machine that they and they alone control. And they need the data to do it. And that's what they're doing.
We're going to take another call here. Let me just hold that question. I'm going to sit on this question I was going to ask you, and let's go out to the phone lines and welcome our caller. Hi, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, it's John up in Fort Collins.
Hi, welcome, John. What's your question for Pat Wood?
Well, it's not really a question. They were going to put a smart meter on my house. I told them if they did, I'd chop it off. So they put a meter that just has numbers on it, and they charged me $11 a month more to do that.
Yeah, and was this the city of Fort Collins or was it Larimer County? It was the city, right?
We're in city limits,
Okay, all right. Well, $11 more per month. I don't know. Would I pay that to keep the smart meter off? Yes. Pat, one of the things that Virginia Farver is really known for is explaining the health effects of these smart meters, and I know you've come across that too. So let's address the caller's general concern here. He doesn't want it, and for good reason, and let's let the listening audience know about some of these health effects.
Well, look, here's the thing. You're being punished for refusing to take their latest technology. Most utilities all over the country have some kind of an opt-out now that you can pay anywhere from $10 to $50 a month extra to have an old analog meter, or at least one that doesn't have any Wi-Fi or anything in it. And this is a form of taxation that is absolutely outrageous as far as I'm concerned. They're punishing you for making your own choice. And yet they say, well, the whole thing is voluntary. Well, like Agenda 21 is voluntary. Well, no, it's not. It's not voluntary at all. But you pay, if you want to get any relief from it, you're just going to have to pay more than other people would have to pay for it. And as far as the health risk is concerned, they have made blunder after blunder in implementing these things without studying the effects of what Wi-Fi has on electricity. This is something, I think it was foolishness on their part to try and put the two together. But what happens when you have a strong Wi-Fi signal right next to an electrical current? You end up producing a dirty electrical current in that facility when it's going in, because you've got different frequencies interacting with the frequency that's supposed to be in the power line in the first place. It was never really meant to be together, but they put it together thinking this is expedient. This is an off-the-shelf solution. We could just get this Wi-Fi, build it right in, and boom, we're done.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for your call. We'll be back after these messages. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Howdy, folks. Have you ever thought about having your own backyard chickens? Now you have a source for certified organic, no GMO, no...
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings, and to his kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
TechnocracyRising.com. That is the name of my book. The subtitle is The Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. That's a mouthful, but it kind of says what the book's about. And TechnocracyRising.com is where they can find it. And they can also find it on Amazon.com if they don't like my website for some reason. You can go and get it on Amazon. You can probably even go to a local bookstore and ask them to order it for you if you want it as well.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned here a couple times throughout the show, it's a book. First of all, I've interviewed Pat on this 2 or 3 times, and I had to read the book twice. It's so fact-filled, and I found it so personally applicable to my life and really the future of our children that I just had to go back and read it again because, Pat, I'm going to make a real bold statement here, and this will kind of take us into the break, I'm sure, with your comment. But I fear that my generation is really the last generations of Americans as we know it. I think my son is going to be living in a totally upside-down world. What's your reaction to that?
I think that's exactly where the stakes are right now, Dave. If these people are successful at flipping the global economy away from capitalism and free enterprise into technocracy, then we will be pushed back into the dark ages like we were several hundred years ago, a feudalistic system where we, the people, will have a very difficult, hard life, living as the instance of the landlords, the land barons, if you will, who will be the global elite, of course. And it'll take us hundreds of years to climb back out again if we last that long at all. It'll take hundreds of years for us to climb back out of that condition of slavery to a condition of freedom and liberty again. A very unfortunate situation, but I think the cards are on the table. Our chips are all in at this point. And this is the last hand.
You know, unfortunately, what I see too much of is a condition that people in the field of psychology and sociology call cognitive dissonance. We put the evidence in front of them, and they just bury their head in the sand. What percentage of the population would you estimate have an awareness of the dangers of technocracy and how our future is bleak if we don't turn it around?
Maybe 0.1%.
You just took the breath out of my lungs here.
Not very much.
Wow.
Not very much. And I'll tell you, I'm not. I won't give any production numbers of how many books have been sold at this point. There are many people like yourself, I have to say, that really get it, that really understand it, read the book, they grasp it, they've done their own research. But compared to the 350 million people we have in this nation, it's minuscule how many people have been touched with this message of technocracy.
You know, I just want to say this to the listening audience. 10 years ago when I got dragged into this fight kicking and screaming because John McCain and his globalists tried to steal my land without compensation and that of about 200 of my neighbors, and I became the spokesperson and then eventually ended up with a radio show, I was happy. I was a college basketball coach. I was teaching graduate and undergraduate level courses. I was living my dream life. I didn't need to do this. And what I'm telling people right now is if you don't become an evangelist and you don't get out on the streets and spread the word, there isn't going to be a future for your kids. And we're going to touch on this more after we come back from our top of the hour break.
Now you can reach the American Freedom Network at our new P.O. Box, 1750 Johnstown, Colorado, 80534, or online at amerifree.com.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated.
I'm Dave Hodges. I'm the host of the Common Sense Show, and my show airs every Sunday evening from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, and that would be 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Mountain, which is the time zone that we're broadcasting in. And I would hope that you would join me. If you've liked what you've heard, our special guest in the first hour has been Patrick Wood. He has graciously agreed to continue with us into the second hour. We're discussing his book, Technocracy Rising, and all that applies. Pat, I want to ask you a real specialty question here as we get back into this topic. I saw on our local television here in the Phoenix area where I reside, an HOA, just a terrible action by an HOA. These elderly ladies, and they were all in their 70s, do care packages for underprivileged kids at Christmas time. But they don't have anything in there of a religious nature. There's nothing in there about God or Jesus or Muhammad or anything. There's just, they do care packages at Christmas time, and they meet in one lady's house to do the cards and the gifting. And the HOA came back and threatened to fine them for carrying out charity work. How does HOA, number one, fit into technocracy? And number two, what can people do when they have this kind of abuse going on in their HOA?
Yeah, you know, about the only thing they can do, I think, is move, which, of course, that's not a very good answer for a lot of people. Like, they have to stay where they are. But, you know, there's a trickle-down effect from all of this control mentality. And when you see it coming down through the federal government, through state government, through local, you know, NGOs and stuff, and you see it within corporations and stuff as well. The trickle-down is when you give people opportunity to lord it over other people, they'll take the chance to do that. And that's what you see in these HOAs. These people are just little power-hungry wannabes that found themselves in a position where they had power over other people to make them do something that they wanted, you know, they wanted to do. And, you know, it's just an unfortunate side of human nature. This just happens. And there's very little recourse because, you know, when you signed the HOA, when you bought the home in the first place, you had no idea. You didn't bargain for that kind of garbage. They might have even told you, hey, we're a bunch of good old boys, and they might have been a bunch of good old boys when you bought your property. But a little turnover, somebody leaves, you know, 4 or 5 others come in, get elected, you get some, you know, some wannabe, you know, sustainable development woo-woos in there, and all of a sudden they think they're like little gods, and they will exercise authority over you, and if you don't like it, they'll crush you.
Yeah, the magic words there, Pat, were sustainable development, which leads right back into Agenda 21 and technocracy. So are you saying HOA process is very much a part of technocracy?
I wouldn't say that exactly that way because we've had HOAs as far back as I can remember in my lifetime in one form or another. Have they gotten worse? Absolutely. Have many of them been taken over by punks? Absolutely. Yeah. You know, these people just run amok and they do crazy things, and unfortunately, there's no checks and balances in the short run that you can, you know, that you can do to an HOA to force it into compliancy. About the best you can do is try and call a special election and get the people ousted. If a majority of the people in the community want to oust somebody, they usually can. But how often does that ever happen? It just doesn't. And you know, people won't rise to the occasion to say, "Yeah, they done you wrong. We're going to throw the bums out." It just doesn't happen that way.
No, that's unfortunate, but you're exactly right. I see HOAs as kind of the old Soviet collectivized management system. But really what we see increasingly with HOAs, aren't we seeing, and you mentioned it too, sustainable development and other Agenda 21 policies?
Absolutely, you're seeing that. And that's being forced down the pike now from the counties, from the cities, from the states as well, from the state government as well. To issue regulations and so on that the HOA must adhere to. And they didn't ask for that. It was just shoved down their throat. Said, well, this is the way you're going to run your HOA or else. And I don't know what the or else would always be, but, you know, these regulations come down and they force the HOA to knuckle under to them. And all of a sudden you see these policies show up in your community. You say, where the heck did this come from?
Exactly.
Well, that's where it came from. That's where it came from.
Well, Pat, I want to kind of bend this into where we presently are in the economic end of this. Clearly, anything this massive, which is threatening to take away energy usage, push us into stack and pack cities, move us out of our cars, force us into things like light rail even when we can't afford it, in urban sprawl. Clearly, there's got to be money as a motivator. So let's talk about the money side of it. What's motivating the people behind technocracy, and how will it show up for the average American?
Well, it's a resource grab, Dave. It's not about money. If you have $1 billion in the bank, you're not rich. If you have $1 billion worth of stock, you're not rich. Now, society was, oh, he's rich, we're going to bow down to him. But you're not rich. You just have a bunch of worthless paper that other people value today, but they may not value it tomorrow. And historically, wealth has always been measured in terms of resources, and in particular, resources of planet Earth. That's where the wealth of all nations has come from. It's from the resources and the wealth, the timber, the oil, the minerals, the gold, the silver, the copper, all of the other metals and stuff that we make things with, all the rare earth elements and stuff. All of these things that come out of the earth is where wealth is derived. Technocracy plans to lock up the resources of the world into a common trust that will be trusteed, if you will, by this global elite to allow their cronies limited access to those properties to do development stuff. You and I will never see them. We'll never get close to it. But the cronies of these people will be allowed to go in and maybe drill a well, maybe do a mine, maybe hope to harvest some timber or whatever. But this is a power grab. This is a land resource grab, Dave. And we have seen this in America with BLM, for instance, and the Park Service grabbing up land by the millions and millions of acres all over our country. This is a land grab. They're doing the same thing in other countries of the world. That's what the purpose of this. Not about money. It's about resources.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to step away for these brief messages, and we'll be back with Pat Wood.
Howdy, folks. Have you ever thought about having your own backyard chickens? Now you have a source for certified organic, no GMO, no...
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
I've got a vision for what I want to do for the country. See, I know exactly where I want to lead. It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
And it really is a stunning analysis of where we're headed and the dangers that lie ahead for every American. And in case you're just joining, as I mentioned to Pat in the last hour, and he agreed that Pat and I might represent a generation that's the last generation of Americans as we understand it, because our children are going to be living in an upside-down world. They're going to be living like serfs in stack-and-pack cities. And, Pat, let me digress just for a second into what I brought up earlier. America2050.org, a website put together by one of the advisors to the president. In fact, he actually was a mentor to the president when he was a community service activist. His name is Mike Kruglich. And in his website, he discusses the concept of megacities. Can you talk about that for a moment and how that fits into technocracy?
Well, this is part of the master plan of Agenda 21, is to drive all of the people, and as many as possible in any case, into megacities, at least megacity regions around the world. In our country, they're already defined. There's a map you can find located on Google that gives you all of these regions and where they have been defined in America. The policies are in place to drive people off of rural America into these city regions where people can be controlled and micromanaged. Now, I kind of look at it like a giant feedlot, where you have 50,000 cattle in pens that are being fed and force-fed and injected and moved around and weighed and punched and tattooed and everything else, getting them ready for the slaughterhouse. That's what they're trying to do with these mega cities, is herd everybody into them so that they can be micromanaged and controlled like a herd of cattle.
Define micromanaged.
Well, when I say micromanage, this is kind of a hard thing maybe to get a hold of. There was an article recently that I was made aware of by one of the top geographers in the nation, and his name was Jerome Dobson, and he's the head of the American Geographical Society, for instance. The guy's a brain, okay? He's a professor at the University of Kansas. He wrote an article about 3 years ago sounding the alarm for what's called geospatial tracking of people and things. And he coined the term geoslavery and warned very bluntly that this concept of geoslavery means that when you can be tracked, when you can be, when your speed and your direction and your destination can be controlled, you are no longer a free person. You are a slave. And this was a shocking article coming from somebody so high up in his own field, but he's a little bit like the nuclear engineer in the 1940s that was working on the atomic bomb, and some of them woke up all of a sudden, realized that they were building this for a military that was going to go blow up a few million people, and they said, holy crud, what are we doing here? We have become the rats. And there's a flavor of this in this guy's paper called geoslavery. This is what they can do in cities, is track everybody and keep them in areas that they want to keep them in, allow them to go to the areas they want to go, and they can monitor every single physical activity that you have in the city.
Did you see where Congress just granted Obama the right to limit people's travel based solely on his say-so?
I did.
Yes, that's exactly what you're talking about. And there's one more thing I want to throw into the pot here while we're stirring the pot. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me, Pat, if I'm wrong, but didn't the state of Oregon pass a law where they put a chip in your registration and you'll be taxed based on the mileage that you go? And not only will you be taxed, your every move and location can be tagged.
Well, that's correct, Dave. In fact, I wrote a paper on that a couple of weeks ago called Data Dominance, Technocracy's Final Hurdle. And the issue with this so-called VST taxes, vehicle something or other mileage
vehicle
tax.
Mileage tax, a VMT.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, VMT. What this is a smart meter for your car. That's the best way to look at it. It's smart meter for your car. Think electric smart meters. This is a smart meter for your car. And it's not just that they will be able to, this came out in the document that we found at the University of Iowa. It's not just that they're going to track it. They're going to charge you a customized rate of tax that nobody else pays but you, and it's going to be based on your carbon footprint. They actually said that. They're ultimately going to base it, they're going to give you a customized tax based on your personal carbon footprint. You say, well, how the heck are they going to know that? Well, they're going to know that by drawing on all the other data that they've got on you in this master database, from your health information to your purchases to your smart meter information and everything else, how many plane flights you took last year, how efficient are your appliances in your home, what kind of car do you drive, how big a home do you have, etc. And they will custom tailor your carbon footprint to produce a tax that you pay on every mile that you drive on the highway. This is just mind blowing. We knew this was going to go there, Dave. We knew that.
Right.
But now we have the proof of it, that this is exactly what they're intending to do. So you may one day, I'll tell you, call up to let's say, go online, you're going to get a plane ticket to go back to New York to visit a sick relative or something. You know, maybe your mother, your father's sick, and somebody says, come back here right away. And you go to order a plane ticket online, and when you get to the purchase part, it comes up and it says, I'm sorry, but you're not able to buy the ticket at this time because you have exceeded your allowance for your carbon footprint. And then they give you some handy tips on how you can reduce your carbon footprint for the next month so that you might try again to buy a plane ticket to fly to New York to see your then-dead relative. You see, they can calculate this stuff on a real-time basis and apply it to you in a policy that says if you violate this level, you're simply not going to buy a plane ticket.
Do you remember back in Texas, and gosh, I don't remember the year, it might have been 06, it was before Obama became president, and the Trans-Texas Corridor was coming in, and the foreign takeover of interstate highways under the CAFTA agreement. But one of the things that the Texas state legislature had thrust upon it was to pass a vehicle mileage tax, but in addition, when they put that chip in your car registration, they were also going to fine you when you exceeded the speed limit. Do you recall that?
I sure do. That would be a no-brainer. That would be easy to do.
Yeah, because if people just look at their GPS, and you're driving down the road, and let's say the speed limit's 65 on the highway, and you hit 66, that turns to red numerals, and it says, hey, you're over the speed limit. Well, if that were to happen with this Texas legislative proposal from 9 years ago, you'd automatically be issued a ticket. Just kind of like photo radar. You know, you don't even need a cop involved. It's your chip. Yeah. I think I'd be putting my car registration in the microwave, though.
Probably so. But, you know, that's a one-to-one relationship where they do that. In other words, it's a direct, you violate this rule, you're going to get this ticket. There's no other consideration in that equation on how much you're going to pay, for instance, for your ticket. But in this case, what they've done now is they're incorporating the various databases of the country, of the feds are collecting on us. They're turning this into a giant calculator for everybody's carbon footprint in this nation, Dave. That's what they're doing. That's part of the reason they're doing this, maybe the essential reason. They want to be able, as Al Gore says, they want to punish those who don't live in accordance with what they think you should live. So
as Al Gore has his $10 million house on the beach, and as Al Gore jet sets around the world, you know, it's kind of funny to me when they have these global warming conferences, like in Sweden or Rio de Janeiro, that they all fly in on their private jets.
Oh, of course.
What's the message? Oh, we got to get out of our cars and our planes. And what do? They're in their cars and planes. But it's kind of a case of rules for thee, but not for me. So, okay, let's say we have energy limitations placed upon us through a carbon tax or whatever means they use. Are there any ways that the elite are going to be able to avoid the same fate as the policies they're trying to thrust upon the average person?
Of course they will. They already are.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
And the reason is, Dave, this whole thing is a sham. It's an absolute sham. It's a con. It's a shell game. I don't know how else I could say it. It is totally without merit, and they're conning people. The whole world is being deceived into this sustainable development garbage. There's not one basis in truth that says it has to be this way. They're just doing it, and they're conning people into doing it by one way or another. Sometimes they're being forced, but it's a scam. It's just an out-and-out scam. And look, Bernie Madoff got 3 lifetimes in jail for scamming investors, telling them they had investments. He took their money and he used it for other stuff, and it was a big Ponzi scheme. And it finally caught up with him. But Bernie Madoff was a well-respected person in New York City. He was the talk of the town all the time. And the guy was a fraud. He was a scammer. And he finally got his comeuppance, and he's in federal penitentiary today and will be for the rest of his live-long life. But this whole sustainable development stuff is as much a scam as Bernie Madoff was a scam, and yet nobody is calling these people for what they are. They're scammers. And that's it. They're criminal for what they're doing.
Well, I used to like to call Bernie Madoff as Bernie Madoff with all our money, because when you make the analogy that you just did to Technocracy and Agenda 21, this is ultimately what it's about. If you control energy usage, don't you effectively control all resources?
You do. You absolutely do. And the consumption of it. Look, here's what Technocracy was defined as in 1938 by one of their magazines. It says, Technocracy is the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population. That's it in a nutshell. They want everything. And don't blame this on politicians. These are the scientists and engineers that are doing this to us. There's another group of would-be controllers that are trying to take over the world, and you got to call them technocrats. They are not politicians. Politicians right now are the useful idiots. They're just being played right now. They'll be dumped as soon as they can, but they're just the useful idiots. But these scientists and engineers really think that they're going to pull this off and that they're going to control every cotton-picking economic thing on this planet, and they really think that they're going to control all of the resources of the planet themselves.
It takes my breath away. And I remember when Obama came in, and if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but when he came in, and he had run on the campaign promise that, well, under my cap-and-trade plan, energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. That's a quote, word-for-word quote. And when he got into office, didn't he try to get the Senate to agree to a 80% reduction in American energy use by the year 2020? Am I right on that?
Yes, you are. Yeah, fortunately,
I just want people to fathom this.
I know. It's incredible. This is right out of the Agenda 21 playbook, by the way. And I did some calculation on this one time. What would that mean to us if he could somehow reduce carbon, back to say 80%? That would put us around. That would push us back in history to around 1825.
Oh my! I remember telling a group of undergraduate sociology students when we were talking about this proposal. And, Pat, what I said to them is, I want you to imagine all the things that take energy for what you do. Everything, from your music media to driving a car to watching television, turning on a light, cooking a hamburger. Imagine all that, and imagine they want to take away 80% of that energy. And the people looked at me like, it can't be true. Well, it is true, and we'll cover more when we come back.
There was a man sent from God whose name was John.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
And we have been speaking with Patrick Wood, the author of the fascinating book, Technocracy Rising. And Pat, once again, for the people that just joined us in the last half hour, let's tell them how they can get a copy of your book.
Yeah, believe it or not, it's technocracyrising.com, just like it sounds. And they get
I like how you made that so simple that even feeble minds like myself could remember that. I want to go for a second back to America2050.org, and at the risk of sounding like a wild-eyed radical conspiracy theorist, And we all know that, according to Fox, CNN, there's never a conspiracy. No two bad men would ever get together and plan to do something wrong. But ignoring that prohibition on critical thinking for a second, I am greatly concerned about the math associated with the maps associated with America2050.org. If you go there and look at the maps after the show, you'll see a population map with the megacities, and they call for 11 megaregions. Oh, almost sounds like Hunger Games, doesn't it? And in each megaregion, they will have a maximum of 6 million people. Now, by my estimation, we don't really know how many people are in the country thanks to Obama's open border policies, but we estimate somewhere between 315 and 330 million people, give or take 15 million, right? And if you add up 11 megacities, Pat, times 6 million, you only get 6 million people. I'm a little bit concerned about that figure. Am I too paranoid? And what's your reaction to that math discrepancy?
Yeah, the math is a little fuzzy, isn't it? Maybe they've gotten a hold of some of the Common Core math algorithms. I don't know.
Very good. But I guess what I'm leading into, okay, is the ultimate and conspiracy talk. But you know what? It's not conspiracy talk, because when you read the globalists like David Spangler, Ted Turner said in Audubon magazine in 1997, we need to reduce the population of the earth by a full 90%. We want no more than 500 million people. Now, that's them saying that. That's not me thinking they think that. They're in print saying these things, and I'm talking about the elite who are behind these insane policies. So, Pat, let's go to it. 66 million versus a minimum of 315 million. Where are the other 250 million people going to be by the year 2050?
That's exactly right. Yep, they're not factored in. Where did they go? That's not specified.
And there's a website out there that I've written about on thecommonsenseshow.com called Deagle. DEAGLE, and they're a front group for the CIA. And we won't get into all how I know that, but they are. And they do projections for the year 2025. And they have projected our population by the year 2025 to be, drum roll please, 66 million people. Mm-hmm. With a GNP reduction of 1,000%.
Yes, and of course that's right along with the lines of Agenda 21.
Yet Russia, China, and the Middle East do not have a corresponding population drop, according to the Deagle documents. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to let you just kind of run with this for a second, if you would.
Well, the whole idea of resource usage is that there are too many consumers of resources on the planet, and that the consumers of resources need to scale back their use of the resources so the Earth can replenish what we've taken from it. And you could look at this. You could look at the reduction of resource usage in two ways. Existing population could reduce its carbon footprint, if you will, back to 1825, and everything would be in balance. Or you could reduce the population by 80%, and the remaining 20% could have a healthy lifestyle comparable to what we have today. You see the balance there? You can either reduce people, or you can reduce the consumption of people.
But there's not the need to, because I have read repeatedly, for example, since they say we have too many people, we have enough food to supply 27 billion, and we're only going to max out at 9 billion according to the population demographers. We can supply double the water needs that we have for people if we really cared to than the people who are living today at about 14 to 16 million, or billion, excuse me. And we have plenty of oil. It doesn't come from dinosaurs. And we have ice growing at the pole. So I'm wondering, is global warming and climate change, is it really real, or is it a fiction designed to get control of everything on the planet?
Remember, Dave, I said this was a scam. I said it 4 or 5 different ways. It's a
okay,
scam.
Bingo.
That's all it is. This thing is it's just a big ripoff, and people need to start seeing it for what it is and who's doing it to us. It's not just some minor little policy dispute somewhere in the bowels of the IMF or something. this is what these clowns have been after since 1973. In earnest, they've had a 40-year head start, and all of these cockeyed policies that we've been talking about, these nutsy, wacko, psychopathic policies that they're coming up with, this isn't just talk anymore. There was a time when it was just talk. I got no problem with talk. We have free speech in America. You can talk about whatever you want. But when some psychopath starts talking about, dictating the whole world or something, and all of a sudden he gets elected, let's say to a governor of a state or something, I said, whoa, wait a minute now. You talked about this stuff, but now you're going to actually go do what you talked about. Doing is a whole different thing than talking. That's all. That's my point. These people are doing, folks. They're not talking. They're doing, and they're doing it to us, and they're scamming us. They've convinced the world that climate change is somehow gonna flood the whole world, and we're all gonna die with whatever, I don't know, whatever Al Gore says. But listen, 3 months ago, the head of climate change at the United Nations, Christiana Figueres, she said, and I quote, that this is the first time in the history of mankind that we're setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution, close quote. That is, read between the lines, that's capitalism and free enterprise. They are going to murder the system that has made the world wealthy in the first place. They're going to kill it outright and replace it with their so-called green economy, which is technocracy. That's why I get so excited about this, Dave. Their replacement is pure, unadulterated technocracy from the 1930s, and even she herself admits that this has never happened in the history of mankind.
Yeah, I call it the gangrene agenda, but when we look at the movie Hunger Games, when we look at that movie, we see the average person living in filth and squalor and the worst of ghetto conditions. Yet in the movie Capital City, located coincidentally where modern-day Colorado would be in the map of Panem, it's interesting that they had technology that people from the outlying areas had never seen in their life. Are we going to see this kind of duplicity with the distribution of resources and technology between the elite and those not lucky enough to be the elite?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good short answer going into the break. We'll come back and put a wrap on this and ask Pat what we can do to stop it.
Square Root Construction.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings, and to his kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. we're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
I want to just say something to people in the general area that are listening to this broadcast. You are like the frogs in the boiling pot. Slowly the temperature is being turned up. Incrementally, Agenda 21 and Technocracy are being implemented in your communities, and it is not to your benefit. It's to your financial detriment. It's to your physical health detriment. How do I know all this about your community? Because I'm fortunate enough to know people like Stacy Lynn and Virginia Farber, who you heard from earlier in the show, who called in and just gave us a snippet of how bad things are from this perspective in Fort Collins and Larimer County. And the changes are so subtle, it's hard to notice. But you're going to wake up soon in an absolute nightmare unless your community, like every other community in this country, stands up and pushes back against Agenda 21, ICLEI, and their technocracy practices. So, Pat, long-winded intro here, but I wanted to get to the notion of what you think we can do from a citizen standpoint to push this insanity back.
Number one, Dave, I would tell people to forget national politics. We are not accomplishing anything by sending people to Washington, D.C., where the executive branch has completely gone rogue and completely isolated the Congress. They've been neutered. They're not good for anything at this point. And what we need to do at this point in time is look to our local communities, our own communities, towns, cities, counties, and we need to root out this stuff from these entities, from our city councils, from our planning, zoning and planning commissions, from the Board of Supervisors, from all of the cockeyed stack and pack stuff that we've been talking about, the planning stuff that comes from outside. Our local communities need to be cleaned up, and that means your community right there where you're listening to the program right now. And this may seem a little bit oblique, but I'm going to give you an analogy of the health of a body. We talk about our immune system a lot, how important it is to keep our immune system up so we don't get disease. And once you get sick, your immune system has been compromised. Well, the immune system of a nation is its local communities. This has always been the case throughout history. The health of the local communities is what determines what happens up above them on a larger regional level, on a state level, and so on. And our immune systems all across America have been completely compromised. They've been busted to 1,000 pieces. The only way we're going to fix this, if we're ever going to put a line in the sand against these technocrats, is to start by reforming our own communities and driving this garbage out. I can't say any more.
I think it's very well said, but I have to wonder why the good people of Fort Collins haven't done something about some of the local politicians they have in office who think these policies of putting things like smart meters on your homes that have proven health side effects, electromagnetically radiating people. Ask Virginia Farber about the unfortunate fate of her beloved son who succumbed to cancer, brain cancer, because of this kind of technology. Folks, your death curve is going to spike in your area, and I could be speaking to Lexington, Kentucky, San Jose, California, Austin, Texas, but right now I know I'm speaking in northern Colorado, where these policies are coming in wholesale, particularly in Fort Collins. And you have to ask yourself, really, what kind of community do you want to live in? What kind of future do you want to give your kids? And when you have politicians that tell you that smart growth and smart meters are a great idea, they should be shown the door in the next election. And, Pat, I agree with you. the national politics in this country is over, because the presidency, to run for the presidency this next term, is going to cost over $1 billion per candidate. We're not buying that election on the common man's basis. That's bought and paid for by the corporations bringing you smart growth. So I totally agree. What we need to do is resist at the local level. How does this end, Pat? If you were to write an ending to this based on what you know, because you've spent years studying this, where do you think this is all headed?
Either somebody's going to figure out how to throw a monkey wrench into this whole thing and bring it to a screeching halt, or they're going to win and they're going to flip the switch and turn us into a scientific dictatorship. I'm not particularly happy with either alternative at this point, but it's gotten to the point where there's going to be pain no matter what we do. There's no painless way out of this.
I had John B. Wells on my show Sunday night, and John is one of the most reasoned men that I know, principled men that I know. And 3 times on my show, he basically said, in effect, it's time for a revolution. And he didn't necessarily mean a military revolution, but he didn't rule that out either. Do you think it's going to take something extreme like that to push this back?
Well, and I do, in a mini sense especially, like within a community, we talk about revolution in terms of, 1776 and the 13 colonies and people rising up and, going to battle and stuff like that. But forget all that stuff for a minute. You can have a revolution in your community, you realize. There can be a revolution in any city in Colorado. And same thing in Phoenix, same thing in Mesa, anywhere else. It can be a revolution if enough people stand up and say, we're going to fight this thing to the death. But see, here's the attitude. Most people want to listen. They don't want to do. They want to get pumped up on all the bad news, but they don't want to go out and do anything. And that's what makes that's totally counterproductive. People need to get over that attitude and say, okay, I'm going to be part of the solution here, and I'm going to go out and start a revolution in my community. And I ain't coming back until I get results out of it. Here's the attitude. I learned this from a Texas Democrat years ago. Texas Democrats are a little bit different than the normal Democrat, but his campaign was, he was running for office, his campaign was, to his enemies, he said, I will fight you until hell freezes over, and then I'll fight you on the ice. That was his determination. Now, I'm not crazy about the phrase. I'm not going to put it on a banner and put it up anywhere, but, the attitude has to be that no, I'm not going to take no for an answer. You're not going to tell me to sit down. You're not going to tell me to shut up. And I won't. And I'm going to stay here in your face until you give in.
We're going to step away for our final break. We come back, continue to put a wrap on this interesting interview with Pat Wood.
Howdy, folks. Have you ever thought about having your own backyard chickens? Now you have a source for certified organic, no GMO, no...
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do Internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Up in that area, and I have many dear and good friends in the area. I love your community. I just hate a lot of your politics, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. But I also want to say this. You have a great radio station. What I've heard for the 2 hours that I have been hosting this show, I have heard things like God and the Constitution and honoring authority and the rule of law. That's the message that's coming across very clearly during the commercial breaks. You are lucky to have a station like this to where you can express what's wrong and what's right with this country and what we need to do. And I would encourage people of northern Colorado to use this station as a rallying point to bring about real reform. Well, Pat, I know people have really been interested in hearing you because every time I have you on my show, I always get the calls like, when are you going to have him back? Pat Wood is just such a great interview and such a great writer, and I know people want to get a copy of your book, so let's cover that just one more time so people tuning in late can have an opportunity to get a hold of your book, Technocracy Rising. So again, tell them how to do it.
You bet. TechnocracyRising.com is my book website. I love to send out a personally autographed book to people who buy from my website. It's also available on Amazon.com as well. There's a Kindle version if you like to read on electronic format. And that's it. You can get it either places. Some people have bought it in local bookstores. The bookstores will order it if you ask them to. You probably pay a little bit more. But either way, it's your choice. Get it.
I think the most cost-effective way is for people just to simply go to technocracyrising.com and order right there and get the autographed copy. Pat's written a lot of great stuff through the years, and I think, Pat, this is probably your finest work. I think it's your most important work. You know how I feel about trilaterals over Washington, but this is right up there. And this is the critical issue of our time. And I tell my undergraduate sociology students that environmentalism, climate change, and all the controversy goes with it is the defining issue of your generation. And I know you agree with that, don't you?
I do. I really do. And, like I said before, we're all in right now in that big card game, if you will. All of our chips are pushed into the middle of the table, and there's not going to be another hand. We're down to it now. We don't have another 10 years or 20 years to work this out. The time is right now to do this because they're that close, right? They're that close to slamming the door on us and slamming the door on freedom and liberty altogether. Once they've done that, there'll be no going back. People just don't understand. Oh, well, hey, next week, next month, next year, we got 2016. If we don't get them then, we'll get them in 2020. If you're thinking that way, you don't get it. You need to have a sense of urgency to look into this stuff and get active right this second and start taking control of your own communities again.
Well, I often say to people when I talk about this issue, I can't tell you how to think, feel, or what to do, but I will tell you that you better act like your life depends on it, because your life and the lives of your children depend on it, because the people behind this scheme, as we already pointed out, actually, as Pat said, the people behind this scam have already pointed out, they only want to have 500 million people around. That means a lot of your kids aren't going to be here. Those are their words, not mine. It's not my interpretation. It's their stated and printed intention. And this is a plea to all people. Get a copy of Pat's book and then buy a second copy and distribute it to your friend. It's that important. Pat, thanks for being with us. And my thanks go out to Randy Yarbrough and the great people at KHNC Radio. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on. Dave Hodges, the host, Pat Wood, the guest. God bless all of you. Go out and have a great night.
And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver.